getting the kids dressed, feeding them, sending them off to school, working, and then doing the whole night routine. It's easy to get lost in the mix of that and forget what you saw and hoped for your marriage. And it's understandable because kids need so much of our time and energy, and we start to become complacent with our relationship. They become the highest of highest priorities, and everything else falls by the wayside. Date nights? What's that? Having time to actually finish a conversation with your partner? That's hilarious. Or connecting after the kids go to sleep? No way. Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's been through and still going through the trenches of motherhood myself, I get it. Life gets busy and sometimes your relationship takes a backseat. But guess what? You can feel like a couple while raising kids, and I'm here to help. Join me each week here as we dive into the messy but fulfilling world of marriage and motherhood. From navigating conflict to reigniting that spark, we're going to chat about it all. So, if you're juggling mom life with wife life, this podcast is for you. And hey, if you love what you hear, I'd be so grateful if you could rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Here's this week's episode. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. So, today we're going to be talking about why did you get married? Okay, getting married isn't just something that you do, right? I know growing up, you're like, okay, well, this is something that we do. We go to school, we go to college, we then have a serious relationship, we get married, and we have kids, right? That is the traditional route that has been paved for most people, okay? But marriage is not like going to school where once you finish your years and you graduate and you get your degree, you've made it, you're done. Right? Getting married isn't the end of the road. It is the end of a chapter, but it's also the start of a new one, okay? So for most of us, it's something that we looked forward to and even felt excited when you first got into a serious relationship and you knew that your partner was the one. Didn't you start to imagine how beautiful life could be together? Right? And then you got engaged and now it's like, okay, it's really happening. You're starting to plan the wedding. You're starting to think about, okay, what does our life actually look like after this? What are we going to feel like? What's our home going to be like? What are our kids going to be like? What is life after kids going to be like? We can really go far into the future on what we see for ourselves, right? So when we find our person, it often can feel like, okay, now life can really, truly begin, right? Even though you had a life before them, it really feels like, okay, now I actually know where my life is going. It's easier for me to imagine, right? You can raise a family together and you can do this whole life thing together as a team, and it could feel really comforting and secure for your future. And before kids came into the picture, you probably thought a lot about what you hoped for, dreamed of, envisioned, intended for when it came to your lives together after saying, I do, right? Like maybe you saw yourself laughing a lot together, your love growing stronger over time, being each other's safe space to talk about your goals, your dreams, your fears, and of course, growing your family with little mini versions of you two that you get to raise together and do family things together with, like going to the pumpkin patch, right? Taking annual photos as a family, what your Christmas traditions will be, or holiday traditions, so on and so forth, okay? Maybe you saw your home feeling like a place filled with laughter and love and connection, right? You're all connecting as a close-knit family. And when the kids are asleep, you would connect with your husband, talking, cuddling, doing something fun together, even being intimate. And then regularly having that time to connect away from the kids on dates, maybe even vacations together. And then fast forward a life that feels so full because your kids are thriving adults now and you two are living that retired life, spoiling your grandkids, maybe traveling, and just truly enjoying each other's company and looking back on the things that you two have achieved together and overcome together and experience together, right? Whatever it is that you envisioned, I want you to now pause and ask yourself, when was the last time I thought about why I got married? Why did you get married? Right? After kids, it's really easy to get caught up in the day to day, right? The hustle and bustle, getting the kids ready, getting them dressed, feeding them, sending them off to school, and then working, and then having them come back, and then doing the whole night routine, right? Dinner, bedtime. It's easy to get lost in the mix of that and forget what you saw and hoped for your marriage. And it's understandable. I get it. I get in this place too where I forget because kids need so much of our time and energy, and we start to become complacent with our relationship. They become the highest of highest priorities, and everything else falls by the wayside. Date nights? What's that? Right? Having time to actually finish a conversation with your partner? That's hilarious. Or connecting after the kids go to sleep? No way, right? It's easy to just prefer to actually just scroll on your phone, watch a show, or just go straight to sleep because you are dead tired, right? Being a parent is exhausting. That transition that marriage goes through is really sudden, right? Because you go from having all the time in the world together, being able to have the time to plan these dates, surprise each other, to laugh and do all these fun, exciting things to build your relationship, to feeling like you're just trying to survive these newborn months, this stage of childhood that requires so much energy and time and mental capacity, where all the days are blurring together and you're just trying to make it through, right? And once your kids become more independent, a lot of couples think, okay, this is the time. But what ends up happening is they forget to bring their marriage back to the forefront, right? So in those baby stages, you're like, okay, we're good for now. We're just going to sustain. Once they get older, then we'll do this and that. But then when that time actually comes, based on my personal experience, based on my clients, they don't actually revisit the idea of bringing their marriage back to the forefront. Instead, the focus stays on the kid, and the impact of neglecting the marriage really starts to become obvious with the influx of arguments, the resentment that builds up, the feeling of not wanting to connect, no motivation, no planning, and all that excitement that you had before is gone, right? And your sex life, that becomes something that's non-existent or nearly non-existent. So you become more like co-parenting roommates instead of that lively, flirty, fun couple that you saw you two becoming, right? And so then it becomes more about being in the business of raising kids together and upkeeping a home. And the marriage is now just a business arrangement rather than a romantic relationship. You're just trying to tick boxes off, get things done, instead of actually living that married life, right? Actually enjoying the fruits of your labor. All that time and energy spent building the relationship prior to becoming parents is now something of the past, something that you don't even remember, right? It's like a distant memory. And then you're reminded of the advice that you got pre-marriage, like marriage is hard. How many of you have heard that? I know I've heard my fair share of that. I know people are still saying that to people who are getting married. And so having that in the back of your head, you might decide unintentionally to just keep chugging along, believing that this is just how marriage is while you're raising kids. This is just how life is, okay? Is that it's hard and that people have it worse than you. So you don't complain, you just deal with it because it's not like you're dealing with infidelity, addiction, or some kind of long-term or chronic disability or illness. It's just bickering and being too tired to connect. So surely it'll get better, right? Well, what ends up happening is you become complacent and you decide to just ride it out and hope that things get better on its own over time. Once the kids get older, you'll have a bigger capacity to be able to talk things out. You won't be so impatient. You won't be so stressed out. You won't get mad so easily. You won't feel so resentful. You'll actually have the energy to want to connect, right? So when the kids are old enough to fend for themselves, it frees up that time and energy to actually devote it to your marriage. Except, just like the newborn phase, when you get there, nothing changes. Also, there's all this built up resentment that needs to be worked through and resolved and healed in the marriage. So, meanwhile, you're looking back and you're like, oh, that's like 8 to 10 years of my marriage that I basically just lost. And I'm sure that is not what you saw in your vision when you first got married, right? You're not like, oh, okay, so it's an understanding we have, right? That the first 10 years, we're just going to hate each other. Who would do that, right? Who would do that? And while your experience with these challenges is not uncommon, like I definitely had those challenges, right? It doesn't mean that it needs to be that way.
Hey, speaking of remembering why you got married, I actually have a free masterclass for you to tune into to have the number one conversation that I believe all married couples need to have, but aren't. This one conversation will help you mitigate arguments, feel like you're on the same page with your partner, and stay connected as partners as you go through motherhood and beyond. It has been a game changer, not only for me, but for my clients as well. So check the show notes for the link, and I cannot wait to hear how it goes for you.
The challenges that you're experiencing, the low energy, the little time that you have, difficulty communicating, the frustration, anger, and resentment that you're feeling towards each other, the lack of desire to connect. All of these things can change. These are all issues that I have personally dealt with, that all my clients have come to me with, and all of that can change. Okay? When my clients come to me with these concerns, we address each of them. And through expanding their perspective on how they believe things have to be, improving their communication skills, helping them get that clarity that they need about what they want for their marriage and why, and how to co-create that partnership that will help them fulfill their original vision of how life would be like. Doing that makes that possible. Okay? So if you were to look at your marriage and remove all those challenges, like let's say we waved a magic wand and all of that resolved itself, all of that was worked through, what would you say your marriage would feel like? The problem isn't that you don't want to connect with each other anymore. It's that there are things getting in the way of it. Okay? So let's move those things out of the way by addressing them. Okay? That's where working with a marriage professional like me comes in. As a marriage coach, I can help you with the things that are getting in the way so that you can have the energy, the time, the ability to talk things through as a team, the skills to express how you feel, what you want, so that you can feel seen, heard, and supported. And you will then have the desire to connect again. So it's really not that complicated, okay? It just feels hard because you're in it, right? Whenever we're in the problem, it's really hard to see from an aerial view, like, okay, if you just move these pieces and change these things, then you're going to have a clear pathway to what you want. That's where having someone else come in and show you, okay, here's that clarity that you're needing that's keeping you stuck in how your marriage feels today, and reminding you of why you got married, and help you see that it actually is possible to fulfill that vision again. So let's move those blocks out of the way. Let's resolve those issues, figure out how to get you where you want to go, right? Having that marriage that feels fun, connected, flirty, feels enjoyable. Can you imagine actually wanting to plan something fun with your husband? Not shying away from handling conflict together because you're like, we got this. We got an issue. Let's come together. Let's collaborate. We can figure this out, right? What if it wasn't huge blowups or getting to the point where you're shutting down, but rather when you are faced with conflict, you're like, okay, this is hard and we can do this. Okay. This is what getting help helps you accomplish. Okay. So stop and think, why did I get married? And if you're wanting clarity on what are the things that are getting in the way, and help you clear those so that you can actually enjoy your marriage again and have those skills to be able to sustain a successful, healthy marriage, one that you are proud to model to your kids, one that you are excited to experience, one that you are so thrilled, so happy about, that when you go and take family photos, you actually feel as good as you look in the photos. Okay? Anyway, food for thought. Reach out to me if you are wanting support with this. I am taking on new clients. If you have any questions at all, reach out to me. Otherwise, I'll catch you back here next week. Bye. That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. I would so appreciate that. And if you love what I share here, then you're going to love and want to join my free private Facebook community that's also called Marriage and Motherhood. I hope to see and connect with you in there. Otherwise, I'll catch you back here next week for the next episode. Bye.